take garbage and make it shine. This whole project is asinine. Waste some time with me, I can guarantee this old junk will soon toe the line.
We're polishing turds, mediocrity curd. I can't find the words, this song is absurd. We're polishing turds, we're polishing turds.
Alright, Polishing Turds, episode 2. We're just going to tear this thing down, see what we're working with, see what's good, see what's bad. The general idea here is I want to keep this motor looking the same when we go back together for the most part. I'm probably going to ditch this dual plane intake. It's a Chinese knockoff dual plane. I'm probably going to get rid of that. We're going to keep the same heads for sure. And the internals, I don't know what they are yet, so it's hard to say. I'm going to try to keep the block. All this stuff will be more or less the same. The pan's going to stay the same. Probably got a little repair work to do on the pan. But other than that, we're going to try to keep the theme where we're working more or less with junk, at least as far as the appearance of this thing. I don't want to, bolt a bunch of, badass heads on here. That kind of defeats the purpose of the whole deal. But anyhow, let's take this thing apart and see what we're working with. We got the heads off this thing, and so far it looks pretty much exactly like I would expect. It's pretty standard stuff. The heads, actually I've seen worse. They're Chinese no-name or something heads, but I've seen worse stuff, so that there's that. The biggest thing, the most obvious thing that we're seeing that's kind of a problem is, I checked the stroke and it is 3750, so this is actually a 383. That's not a guarantee with these motors that people buy from somebody. Who knows if it's really what it's supposed to be. But this is also pretty typical. The piston is in the hole. Come and zoom in here, production assistant bird dog. So that the piston's in the hole at least 25 thousandths, probably closer to 30. It's kind of a crude measurement, but just ballpark. This piston's nowhere near coming up to zero deck, right? Which is just, zoom back out, just a complete waste of horsepower.
Dislike.
What happens is on these older motors, small block Chevrolets, Fords especially, the rebuilder's piston, the aftermarket piston, is generally speaking about 20 thousandths or so shorter. They do that so that it can go in a decked motor and not cause problems, right? Well, the problem is if you don't deck your motor to the right height, you're losing a ton of compression. We may figure that up just to see how much we lost there, but it's just free power that you're wasting. Fords are terrible about it because the Windsors have two deck heights, a 9.5 and a 9.480. Well, the pistons are generally made to be short so they can go in a decked 9.480 block. Well, guess what? If you put those pistons in a 9.5 block and don't deck it, you're way in the hole. And that, you ever notice how a lot of 351 Windsors on motor and stuff don't run worth a damn? That's more often than not, that's why. But anyhow, that's the basics of this. Now we're going to rip the bottom end apart and see if there's anything useful in there. This is all just flat tapping hydraulic stuff going in the trash. But let's take a look at the bottom. Okay, we got the bottom end apart, and it looks just about exactly as you would expect. It's not tore up, everything looks functional. It's just a bunch of junk. So that's why we call this polishing turds, not polishing diamonds, right? So anyhow, let's look at the rod here. It's an Eagle cast steel crank, and these Eagle, I think they used to call these things Sir rods or something. They're just a cap screw stock style rod. They're better than stock, but they're nothing great at all. And they're not going to be what we want in this thing for what we're trying to do. We're going to turn this thing a little bit, make some power, and we need some longevity for bracket racing. These guys make a lot of passes, so you got to put a rod in there that's going to last it and do the job you're trying to do. The other thing is, this thing has like an old Speed Pro, I call them hyper-eubustic pistons. It's a cast piston, and part of the problem with these things, one, they're cast so that they're bad to break the skirts if you start to scream them pretty hard. But the biggest thing is the rings they put on these things are just unreal.
Dislike.
Like it's 5/64, 5/64, 3/16. It's amazing. Like we're just wasting amazing amounts of power doing that. I don't know why they still keep pumping stuff out like that. I guess years ago you had crappy machine work and they didn't know crappy rings, so you just made up for it with tension, you know. So they did it with a big dumb ring like this. But those days are over, and that's going to be one of our bigger gains, is getting rid of that ring package and putting in a modern style ring package. It's going to be a lot of power just from that. The block, it's 4-bolt main. Looks like it's in decent shape, so we got something to start with. We'll probably hone it over just a little bit so we can get a fresh start. But you know, it'll be up to the task. It'll be all right. We might put some main studs or main bolts in it. But that's pretty much it. I don't know if you can see these gigantic rings on this thing. Power killers. Thing has to idle with the carburetor half open. But anyhow, that's that. Now we're going to swap some of this stuff out and go to work. That's enough for today.
Polishing turds. We're polishing turds.